Hello and welcome back to FinalWhistle.ie for Season 2 of the Rugby Show. As always, we have a stacked show coming your way this evening. Tonight, I'll be joined by AIL expert Ciaron Noble to take a look at this weekend's opening fixtures and also by Diarmuid Kearney to review all of the action in the women's AIL. I'll also be joined by Shannon, Director of Rugby, and a long-term friend of the show, Pat Browne, as well as Leinster and Wicklow fullback Ella Roberts to discuss her meteoric rise over the past few seasons. So now I'm joined by Pat Browne. Pat, welcome back to the Rugby Show.
Thanks, Luke. Delighted to be here.
Well, the last time I was speaking to you was straight after that 1B final win over Naas, and I think that there was a couple of sore heads around Shannon then. How have things been since?
Yeah, there was, I think, 5 successive days, not by me, but by a cohort that they celebrated long and hard. But, a couple of weeks off and then straight back into it again to get ready for this season.
And obviously now with being promoted to 1A, you've had quite a lengthy pre-season, as you'd call it. And is preparation maybe a lot different to how it was last summer?
No, I think you can get caught up in that. It's the same thing. Obviously, everything goes up about 20-30% in terms of the opposition you're facing. And I think as a group, we said off the pitch and on the pitch, we need to raise our game. So in terms of that, the preparation is slightly different. But in terms of getting ready for a season, everything is pretty much the same. Our S&C, our squad has been together for so long that I think, I was working it out earlier on, I think there's of the current senior squad, well over 60% of them have 1A experience with Shannon. So that's how long they've been together.
Yeah, and obviously with going up, you do need to sometimes look elsewhere for players and introduce them to the squad. And has there been much of that done in Shannon over the past couple of months?
Yeah, we've really strengthened the squad in terms of Mike Cook, who would have represented Ireland under 18s, Ealing and London Irish. He's an out half. He came in. He's over in UL studying. The Hurley brothers, Daniel and John. But I think they've come in from all credit. But I think the most exciting thing for us is the development through our under-20s into our senior panel. So we've the likes of Owen McCormack, Cian O'Halloran, who played with Munster A last week, Josh Costello, who played with Munster A last week as well, Paddy Hassett and Harry Long. They will all feature for us this season. They're really talented, really exciting, and they have taste of underage representative rugby as well. They've really good schools careers, but we're really excited about them. So I think we have this thing that we're trying to do. It's called Shannon 2022, and it's basically it's an aspirational thing, but that within a couple of years, all 22 in an AIL match day will have come through at least the under-20s in Shannon, that we produce our own players, and that's what we're striving towards. So that, I think, in addition to the recruits that we've gotten in, it's the promotion from our under-20s and our underage of our own players. That's the most exciting thing.
And apart from, let's say, recruiting during the summer, and I think a lot of us know what goes on with the pre-season, with the rugby or whatever, but from a coach or of a director of rugby standpoint, what goes on in them few months, and they must be vital to shaping the season ahead?
Well, the initial thing is the review. I mean, we had to park the celebrations, and literally the review started that week in terms of from top to bottom, what went well, what we need to change. So we literally sat down, myself, the rugby committee, we sat down with everybody from Pat and Stephen, all the coaching staff, to our medical staff, our S&C staff, our management, the players, just to get a feel for what we did. We actually then decided to look at what we did last time we went into 1A. And I think the general consensus was that the squad depth wasn't there, that we got a lot of injuries. We were flying up to Christmas. Teams found us out in the second half of the season. We maybe needed to tweak what we were doing a bit. We didn't. And in terms of our player pool, it wasn't what it should have been. So I think we've strengthened that this time. So I think we're better equipped.
And you're obviously entering a hugely competitive division with quality throughout everywhere. And first game of the season, facing Diarmuid, doesn't get much tougher. Last season's runners up. What's the feeling like for you now, even talking about Saturday's game?
So excited. I mean, Diarmuid, the final with Clontarf last season was incredible. And all season long, I watched them. They were brilliant. They were very well coached. They have a super team, serious talent all across the pitch and off the bench. They don't have weaknesses, but that's the challenge. That's why we're involved in rugby, and we're Shannon. We won't shirk from any challenge. We meet it head on. We're so excited. Of course, there's you've Luke Delaney playing with them. Luke, I would have coached him in Arts Reach, and then Shannon. Simon Malone is coaching there. Simon's a former Shannon player. So look, we've a bit of friendly rivalry. Simon's been texting me all summer anyway. As soon as the fixtures came out, he couldn't wait. So yeah, we're very excited about Saturday. And look, you really want to challenge yourself against the best. And first out, we can have no illusions about where we are after Saturday. We'll either sink or swim. And hopefully we'll swim.
And you mentioned there that you don't want to shy away and that you won't shy away from any match. But in terms of maybe targets for the season, what would you maybe see as a good starting season back in 1A?
Obviously, staying up is everybody's goal. But for us, I mean, again, I don't want to sound arrogant or we're Shannon, and our mentality is always that no matter what we enter, we want to win it. So I think for any team in 1A, if you don't aim to win or to be top four, challenging for it, well then you're already at a loss. So for us, that's what we're challenging for. We want to be top four. We want to be in the business end of it, and we will have slip ups, but it's Division 1A AIL. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it's getting the balance right, trying to get the squad right. And just trying to every match be competitive. That's all we want.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing that a lot of people around the AIL scene have been looking forward to seeing is this Inside the Isles documentary that's due to be released very soon. You let cameras in for the final 8 games of the season, and how did that really come about?
Mark Howard from Prison Digital, who does all our social media, and Katie McCluskey, our PRO, they have been exceptional. They have set the standard for what is done in terms of promoting the club and stuff like that. And they came to us with this idea. And initially, I was like, "Oh, cameras in the dressing room, giving away secrets and stuff." And we were a bit skeptical. But Mark is very persuasive, and his work is incredible. It's such the highest quality. So we relented, and you know what? I've seen a good bit of it. I think it's going to be released in around the break after the Cons game, which is the 15th. Actually, we have a dinner dance that night. I think it's going to be an annual dinner dance. It's going to be, that's the first airing of it. Obviously, Stephen Keogh has already said that he has total editorial rights on it, that he's going to cut whatever makes him look bad, which is probably most of it. Yeah, look, it's weird, but it's the next step in trying to progress that whole side of trying to bring sponsors in, trying to bring members in, trying to sell the product. I mean, the IRFU are brilliant at allowing us to piggyback with them and vice versa, and it's just another vehicle for showing the way things happen in the league. I've seen it. It's not disrespectful to anyone. Bar Andrew Mack dancing around the dugout in Mary's after that trying the end, but he does apologise in the video. I don't want to give too much of it away, but he does apologise to them and everyone else, just getting caught up in the emotion of it. But it's very good, and it's a great insight into what happens in the dressing room and the level of commitment and preparation and detail that actually goes into rugby at this level.
And is there plans to continue that throughout maybe this season coming, or was it maybe just one of them things for the last few games, or are you planning on doing it again this year?
No, focus this year is purely on 1A. We'll look at it again maybe down the line, but for now, it was a nice distraction last season. But no, it's all about rugby now.
Yeah. And obviously, in the last couple of weeks, there was an emerging Ireland squad released. A number of Shannon players in it: Jake Flannery, Thomas Ahern, Roman Salanoa, and Antoine Frisch. How good is that for the club to see players being recognised on that international stage?
It's fantastic. I mean, well, Anton is literally, he's come in and he joined us, but he's already told us that he wants to immerse himself in the club. He wants to be out with the underage, which is amazing. It's fantastic. In terms of for Jake and Roman, lads who come into the club who may not have grown up in the club, they bought into it straight away. And Jake's family are a huge part of it. Alan is still playing and is central to everything we do. But for us to see them progressing is just absolutely phenomenal. And the same with Thomas. Thomas came into us at 18 years of age, about 4 or 5 years ago, and bought into the club. He played through 20s into the senior team. Granted, he didn't play that many games because of obviously COVID, and then he stellarized through Munster. But it's great for us, but it's also great for the clubs, that they came from originally. So I think everybody benefits from it. But it's great to see, grassroots level rugby being recognised. Unfortunately, the timing could be better. That's the only thing I'll say on that. I mean, it's not helpful that it's at the start of the AIL, and it does have a knock-on effect with the clubs.
And just kind of on that issue, was that something that was maybe mentioned to you beforehand, or did you kind of realise when the squad was announced? Are we kind of preparing for that all over pre-season?
No, we kind of heard of it when everybody else heard about it. No, I have to say, just on that subject, that Munster and Ian Costello in particular have been incredible in the way that they communicate with us in terms of planning out the season and game time and training for the players that are involved with us and with them. So I cannot knock them. They are absolutely incredible. And in terms of, as long as I've been involved in Shannon, it's the best that we've ever had a relationship with Ian.
Pat, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and all the best for the season ahead and the match against Ciaron.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you very much.
I'll now be joined by Ciaron Noble, our AIL expert, to discuss the upcoming round 1 fixtures. Ciaron, welcome to the show. I just think you're on mute, Ciaron.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
All good to be back. Yeah, I'm delighted to be back. So
we're back for season 2 anyway, and we have a lot of stuff to get through. The AIL is back, all 5 divisions, I should say, and where else to start apart from Division 1A? We saw an amazing finish to the season last year with Clontarf beating Terranure. And I was just wondering, how do you feel like the season might go?
Well, I think Terranure, based on what I've heard pre-season wise, they look really serious, and I think they'll be going straight for it this year, to be honest. They'll be looking to win it this time around, and I think that's a major focus for them. Like, listening to Shannon, and Shannon couldn't have, I don't know, it's probably a good thing that you play Terranure at the start, like what was said, because it kind of gives you that indication of where you are and where you want to get to. But I think it's a big ask for Shannon to play Terranure in that first game. They have home advantage, which could help them. I think if they could beat Terranure, it would be massive, like just for confidence-wise and to kick on for the rest of the year. But I really think that Terranure I really do think they'll go for it this year, and they will be up there again. Them, Clontarf, Corkon, I think, were kind of underperformed last year for the most part. I think they'll come good again. They've got plenty of Munster lads in the coaching setup, Duncan Williams, and I think Hickey's in there as well. He was the assistant coach for Munster when they won the Heineken Cup back in 2006, I think. So they've got a fantastic coaching lineup, So Corkon will be thereabouts. Then with Trinity and UCD, you never really know where they're, it depends what young lads are playing. And with this Emerging Ireland tour, like, I wouldn't say I'm not a fan of it. Like, it is good, but the timing of it is strange, and it'll have a massive effect for the provinces, which then will funnel down to the clubs, because players will have to get called up. It won't affect Leinster so much. Leinster will be all right. They've got about 50 lads in the line, they have the conveyor belt. But for the likes of Munster, Connacht and Ulster, you will see it's going to affect them massively, I think. And it will then affect the AIL clubs. So it's a bit of a strange decision to have it when they're having it. I get what they're trying to do with the World Cup coming up and everything, and trying to blood new players and try and give them game time, but it is pretty strange, and I think it will have an effect for some clubs, and it'll be interesting to see who it affects the most, really.
And obviously with the fixtures just flashing across your screen there, another huge game which is just hopping out at us is Cork Con against Young Munster, and a big rivalry to start the season. And how do you see that one going?
Well, last year Young Munster beat Cork Con in round 2, I think it was. Young Munster beat Con, and then Young Munster were doing really well at the start. And Cork Con actually lost their first 3 games last season, which I think, like, they were playing, I think it was Lansdowne they had away, then they had Young Munster at home, and then it was Clontarf away. And, you know, they're 3 very tough games to start your season. But I think losing 3 games in a row, it's probably not what you want to do, like, starting the season. So this year, I think it is very important for them to hit the ground running. And I think they can really do that against Young Munster. And I do think it'll be a competitive game, but I can't see Cork Con coming out on top with that one. Jack Crowley is another example of somebody who probably would have been playing for them this weekend, but of course he's on the Emerging Ireland tour. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. But I think Con will be good again this year. I'm not saying they weren't good last year. I just think for the standards, the really high standards they've set in recent times, they probably wouldn't have been happy with only coming 4th and losing in the semi-finals. So I do expect a lot from them this year. In terms of Shannon, I think they've got, like, Shannon are the most decorated team in the AIL. They've got like 9 titles. And then you look at the history of them, like Anthony Foley, Alan Quinlan, all those guys. And it's like All or Nothing, that documentary you're talking about. I'm surprised they haven't got the deal with Prime, but it sounds very similar, but it sounds really good, you know. And I actually think their social media team, I have no problem in saying this, is the best in the entire AIL by a country mile. Like, just the way they do things and everything they do, from graphics to videos, like that video of them when they won the 1B title and they were all singing, it was spine tingling. Like, it was amazing, you know. It showed everything that's good about the AIL and club rugby here in Ireland. So yeah, I don't think Shannon will go down. I don't know if they will quite have it in them to make the playoffs. Maybe, possibly. I'm not saying they won't, but I think they will stay up, and I think, you know, they'll have some big wins in the season. There will be twists and turns for them as well. But yeah, I think it could be interesting for them.
It's obviously very hard right now to look at sides and say, like, they could be in trouble of going down. But one side that maybe did perform below standard was Ballynahinch last year, and they did survive just by beating UCC in that relegation playoff. Do you see big improvements possibly coming from them, or do you think that they could be one of them teams flirting with the drop zone?
It's hard to say, really, because, like, I was looking at previews earlier, you know, and it's really first game of the season. You actually don't really know. All you know is Lansdowne are going to be really good, because they always are. Clontarf are going to be really good, because they always are. Cork Con, and then from Terranure, from what you've seen in pre-season, like winning the Leinster League trophy thing that they won last week, like, you know, they're going to be really good. Yeah, I think they will struggle, though. Like, I do think Garryowen will probably be there as well. I think they'll struggle a little bit. UCD and Trinity, you never really know. One of them usually does really well and the other one doesn't seem to do so well. Trinity were really, really unlucky not to make the top 4 last year, and UCD finished in 8th. Like, they didn't have a really good year, but it kind of just, it's a bit of a roundabout with them. You know, one team does really well and the other doesn't, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes this year. But yeah, Garryowen could be in the fight with Ballynahinch really this year. Just for Lansdowne there, Sam Prendergast, who was involved with the Ireland under-20s in the summer, I expect him to play a lot more for the first this year. He's a fantastic player. Ciaron Prendergast's younger brother. I think him and Charlie Tector together could be dangerous. You know, I presume that they're going to put Charlie 12 and Sam 10, because you'd want to play them both. Like, but Sam could go on and be a full Ireland international. Like, he is that talented, you know, and he's someone that I'd really look out for if you're at a Lansdowne game. Like, he can do special things with the ball. So I think Lansdowne will be up there. They always are. But Sam Prendergast is definitely a name to watch out for.
Yeah, and they really have talent in abundance. And then moving down to Division 1B, last year, I think maybe midway through the season, everyone would have put all their money on Old Wesley to win it. But they ended up making a top 4 and being knocked out in the semi-final by Naas. Do you see them contesting on all fronts again this year? And if not, who do you think can push for them places to go up?
Yeah, it's funny. I was in Greystones a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to somebody, about the way the playoff worked last year, and they were saying, well, Greystones finished top. We were savage all season, and then we lost the final and didn't go up. It was the most stupidest thing ever, the fella said to me. And I was thinking, well, imagine how old Wesley felt. They were literally beating everybody, destroying the whole league. And then it got to the semi-final and they just got caught out in the day. But they deserved to go up. I'm not saying Shannon didn't, but, in a fair world, they should have both went up, really, thinking about it. But, yeah, Wesley were outstanding last year. I do expect them, them and Highfield will be up there again, like they have been, for the last few years. And I do think they will be again. Actually, I don't actually know if it's not been confirmed, but I heard in Greystones Rugby Club the other week that Ben Murphy might have went back to Clontarf. I don't know if that's true or not, but if he's left, that is a loss for them. I do think he was very good last season when he played. So and he's with on the Emerging Ireland tour now as well. He got called up at the weekend. But it'll be interesting to see if that's true or not, if he is going back to Clontarf. I wouldn't be surprised because he was actually at Clontarf when he started after school. And then I think he went to Old Wesley after that. But that'll be interesting. I think Old Belvedere and St. Mary's, that's a massive game this week in 1B, because I think they're both teams that when they want to, they can be right up there. And I think whoever wins that game can really push on, this early in the season and kind of, keep rising. Nice were probably the surprise package of 1B last year. To get in that fourth spot and get to a final surprised a lot of people. They've got a lot of talent. They've got a mix of youth and experience, I suppose, in that team. Johnny Murphy is a really good coach as well at school level and at the club, So I think he'll have big plans this year. And then you've got Eddie O'Sullivan coaching the Bucks this year. And after them coming up, Eddie obviously coached Ireland, so he has rakes of experience. It'll be interesting to see what he can do for them. Eddie was probably doesn't get the credit he deserves in terms of being, when he was Irish coach. Okay, he didn't win a lot, but we were always consistently thereabouts, second place or whatever. And Eddie, despite that bad World Cup campaign we had in 2007, Eddie was a pretty good coach, and I think he'll bring a lot to Buccaneers this year in their fight to stay up in 1B. And I think 1B is always so competitive, even more competitive than 1A, because I think a lot of the teams are on a similar level, and it really just depends on form a lot of the time,
Yeah, and then moving down, obviously Buccaneers gained promotion after beating Queen's University in the playoff final, and similar enough to Old Wesley, they had almost blitzed the league campaign, and then when it came to that final, they ended up losing to them. And then, do you think that maybe that loss in that final could have a knock-on effect to this year with Queens, and obviously with Navan going down from 1B, that there's a host of teams that could potentially go up?
Yeah, 2A is very similar as well. I always say that 1B, 2A, 2B are all kind of similar. All the teams are similar in quality. I always feel like it could just be a bounce of a ball. It could just be form on the day. I don't think it's really hard to predict really what's going to happen. Queens are, as you said, another great example, of a team that probably should have went up, deserved to go up. And I think they got beat at the very end of the game or something last year. I think it was they actually basically won the game. I can't remember exactly what happened, but yeah, they pretty much had went up and then they lost it at the very end, which is heartbreaking, really, But Queens, yeah, they'll be looking to go for it again. But sometimes it's strange in these situations, if you have a big loss like that at the last moment in the game, sometimes, not always, it can have a knock-on effect, and it can really carry into the next season. So that's really important for the likes of Queens and Wesley just to forget about it. Just forget about the fact you nearly got promoted or should have got promoted. You have to just, wipe the slate clean and go again. And yeah, 2A is going to be interesting. I know more about 2B, I suppose, but 2A always seems very competitive. And yeah, I couldn't really tell you who's going to go up. Anybody could, really.
And obviously one of the teams that came up from Division 2B was Blackrock College, and it was that late Matthew Dwan try in pretty much the last minute of the game, which which ended Greystone's hope of 2A rugby. And do you think Blackrock College, a very good coaching panel there, and obviously a very strong squad, do you think that they could have the potential to push some of them 2A sides and maybe potentially even find themselves promoted for a second year on the trot?
Yeah, it happened with Navan a few years ago. I think they won 2B and then they won 2A. They went on consecutive promotions anyway, so it can happen, like it's not impossible. And I do think it's all going back to that kind of quality gap. There isn't a massive jump. So I think, if Blackrock got in a good run of form, who's to say they couldn't go up again?
Yeah. And then moving down to Division 2B, Rainy Old Boys obviously were relegated from 2A, but when you do look at the teams there, it is potentially the most competitive division, and it certainly was last year. There was a lot of quality in the division. You've Greystones who came so agonisingly close to going up, and then you've teams like Galway Corinthians, Belfast Harlequins, Wanderers, and I think Malahide will obviously improve a lot this year as well.
Yeah, I think with 2B it's really interesting because a few weeks ago I went to Greystones for the semi-final of the Leinster Division 2 competition, and Wanderers fairly hammered Greystones that day. Like, they fairly put it to them. But Wanderers will definitely be thereabouts this year, without a shadow of a doubt. And Greystones didn't really play that well the other week, but they're in the early stages. Obviously, have a new coaching setup there. Dan Kenny, I think, is player coach for the year, which is interesting, like how that is going to work, And they've had Kevin there for so long, so it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to that. And when I saw the backline in their game against Wanderers, I was kind of wondering, I think they're just waiting for players to come back, if you get me. Like, I don't think it was the proper backline that we'll see for the rest of the year. But I do think they'll be up there. They're thereabouts. They always are, But for them, it's about consistency. Like, sometimes they play, I've said this last season, like, they play really good throughout the season, but when it comes down to it, sometimes they fall off. So they have to kind of manage that, I think. But a big thing this weekend is they're playing Enniscorthy. So Enniscorthy are just after coming up, and Greystones arguably should have went up. So you've got two teams on the kind of different ends of the scale here. And if Enniscorthy could beat Greystones in Enniscorthy, which I don't think is a massive, it's not like, I think it is possible. Like, I think Enniscorthy have probably been one of the teams. They come all the way from junior rugby, and they've been on a sensational run of form ever since they won that Towns Cup back in 2019, I think it was. So if Enniscorthy could beat Greystones, that would give them a massive boost, Belfast Harlequins are another team that I was really impressed with the back end of last season. I thought they were fantastic. I seen them beat Greystones in Dr. Hickey Park one day, and I thought they were brilliant, to be honest. So yeah, Belfast Harlequins, Wanderers, Greystones, they'll all be there. I don't know a lot about Rainy, but you'd expect coming down from 2A that they'll be thereabouts as well. Malahide could be. Enniscorthy, I think, will push hard. I think they'll stay up in 2B. I think their club on the rise. And yeah, I think it's going to be really competitive. I think Wanderers, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking 6 months down the line and Wanderers are in a semi-final or a final situation. I really think they will be, they're thereabouts this year. It's just, but as we said last year, it's all about getting into the top four. It doesn't really matter if you finish first, second, or once you're in there, you're in with a chance to go up or win the league. So that's what it's all about. And for these teams, it's about managing the form. You have to be able to be consistent all the way through the year and be able to deal with the highs and the lows, because that's what always happens. I prefer a few lows than winning all the time, and then when it comes down to it, losing. So It's all about managing that. And yeah, I think 2B and 2A will be similar levels, and I think they'll both be really entertaining and very hard to call.
Yeah, and it's interesting with your point about Wanderers, about perhaps that they could be looking at a spot at the top end of the season. And if it wasn't for a couple of late tries that they conceded in consecutive games last year, I know that they conceded late to Galway Corinthians, which lost the match, and same with Belfast Harlequins. And those are the fine margins in these type of divisions. And I think also with Sligo, they're another side which do have a lot of potential. They were very good in the first half of last season and then went down on a bit of a downward spiral. But it's certainly a a really a great looking division. And if you want to follow any AIL, I think that could be one division that would definitely be very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's just a pity, really. Like, you get the coverage for 1A and you get a bit of coverage for 1B, but there isn't a lot of reports out there online for the likes 2A, 2B, or 2C. So it is a pity, like, that these divisions don't get more coverage in that sort of way, you know, because they are actually fascinating sometimes, equally fascinating as 1A, for example, or as entertaining, you know. So, like, these lads are, Killian Marmion is a real good example. Like, he's unreal for Greystones. Like, sometimes I watch him and I just can't believe what he's doing. Like, so, you know, there is talent all the way from 1A to 2C, like, which is great. And then even this debate, I don't know, this is a bit off topic, but you know, the Sean O'Brien thing where he wanted to go back and play for Tullow. Like, you know, there's been a bit of debate. I know Bernard Jackman's wrote a column on it, you know, saying that he should have been allowed to play, basically. And Leinster are kind of saying, well, you're not allowed, you have to wait 2 years before you can drop down to junior rugby. Like, Enniscorthy were probably hoping they would get him for the AIL this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. But in that sense, I think they're maybe missing a trick. Like, you know, I think if Sean O'Brien was to play for Tullow, like, it would be massive for the promotion of junior rugby. But yeah, I just think, like, Leinster League 1A and Leinster League 1B isn't massively different to AIL 2C or 2B. So I get what they're trying to say. Like, a player like him can't be going down the leagues, but I think once you get to Leinster League 2A, things are completely different. But I think 1A and 1B are a good standard. So yeah, like, all the divisions are kind of similar. And then when you get to 1A and 1B of the top leagues, they're like where you really know who the best teams are. But, you know, it's all similar enough standards here in Ireland, and it's really competitive, and it's really great to see as well.
Yeah, and then just moving quickly down to Division 2C. This is a division that looks maybe a lot more even now that Enniscorthy are gone. They were definitely a club that were well capable of competing at that higher level, and we're going to see that this year. But the team that lost out to them in the final was Skerries, and they face Ballina, the side relegated from Division 2B this week. Also Bangor, Tullamore, Middleton, all sides that could put it up to them. How do you see Division 2C possibly going?
Yeah, that Skerries game and Ballina is pretty interesting, because that's the team you expect coming down that will be really good in the division, and then the team that could have went up if it wasn't for Enniscorthy. Like, so that's a pretty good indicator of how things are going to go. Tullamore will be good, I think. They'll be thereabouts. In Estonians, it'll be interesting, because that junior rugby, senior rugby debate, in Estonians coming up from junior rugby, obviously, beating Bective last year. I think it was a really close game in the playoff. But that'll be a really good indicator of what the gap is between junior rugby and senior rugby. Because, you know, me now saying there isn't a massive difference between 1A and 2C, maybe in Estonians will really struggle and I'll look like an idiot in a few months' time. But I think, yeah, it's another league that it's massively competitive, and I think Tullamore will be thereabouts. I think Skerries will definitely be thereabouts. They always kind of are, and I think Enniscorthy just maybe had too much class for them last year when it came down to it, but they will be thereabouts. Ballina will be wanting to bounce back. And, you know, then you've got Academicals who, if they can get it right, they can be up there too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. All the leagues will be interesting this year, really, because last year was kind of the first year back post-COVID, you know. But now we've kind of got back into it a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's really hard at this point to say, because you don't know what way the teams are going to line out, and a lot of the times you don't know maybe who the teams have brought in and stuff like that. And then this Ireland Emerging Tour throws another thing into the hat, you know. So it's only really 3 or 4 weeks in that we'll really understand what way these leagues might be going, or who's in form and who's not in form, because a lot can happen in the space of 5 months, and we won't really know until a few weeks in, like, who's looking good and who's not looking good. So I am a bit apprehensive, you know, to predict anything serious here, you know. But I think, yeah, AIL is always really competitive, and I think it's a great advert for rugby in Ireland. The only pity is it probably doesn't get as much coverage as it should. Yeah, and I think the women's AIL is fantastic as well. I was in Belvedere on Saturday, and I thought that was a brilliant match. So, like, I think, yeah, there's rugby's back with a bang, and I've really missed it, and I think a lot of people around the country have. So it's great.
Absolutely. And Ciaron, it's been great to have you back on the show and for season 2, and hopefully we can have another couple of episodes during the season to see how them little predictions are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Luke.
Perfect. Cheers, Ciaron. I'll now be joined by our women's AIL correspondent, Diarmuid Kearney, to review and preview all of the women's AIL games so far. Diarmuid, welcome to the Rugby Show.
Luke, thanks for having me on.
And obviously, 2-3 games pretty much played for most of the sides. Old Belvedere are sitting top with 3 wins from 3. A good win over Suetonians at the weekend. How have you made the this kind of the division out so far? Who's impressed you?
I suppose it's tough to call it at the moment, Luke. I suppose we have, if you look at the league table there, the top 4 are fairly close in terms of the games played. You look at Railway Union and Blackrock, both of them have only got 2 games played, and they're only a couple of points behind Galwegians, and Galwegians are going to be kicking themselves that they couldn't get the win against Suetonians a couple of weeks ago now. It was a game that they were winning by a country mile at one stage. By halftime, it looked like it could be a cricket score of a second half, and then they completely had a meltdown in the second half, and as a result of it, they probably should definitely be top if they had if they'd gotten the win in that game. But Belvedere, to their credit, they've been absolutely phenomenal. Dan O'Brien has been an absolute a find for them in terms of her ability. She got, of course, her international call up earlier on in the summer with Ireland, and has definitely kicked them in contention for a title place this year. But I wouldn't be looking past Railway Union and Blackrock anyway. It's hard to call so far from those top 4 teams who could be the early title favourite, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. And obviously last year they introduced the 2 sections to the AIL, with the top 4 being separated after Christmas, and then a conference table being sorted out. And it was Galwegians who were actually defeated by Suetonians in that conference playoff. And I think, do you think that maybe is a good idea, to be separating them so much and not to be playing against maybe the top teams so regularly?
I suppose it is for them, I suppose, to have that experience of playing teams that are probably on your level, on your wavelength. I suppose to have, like, the likes of Galwegians taking on Blackrock the next time we have fixtures in a week's time. That's one of those fixtures that Galwegians will definitely be looking to claim an early scalp against a team like Blackrock, to say, right, we're definitely here to continue the title. Ballincollig, they've had a tough time with things this year so far. I mean, Railway Union ran in 14 tries against them at the weekend. It's for them, it's not great when they're going up against those teams and you're losing by 70 or 80 points on a weekend. And I think it's like 230 something points they've already conceded after 3 games. That for them is going to knock their confidence as a team. So I think when we do see the top 4 teams going into the conference, I suppose the competitive nature will come out, and it'll give the likes of Ballincollig can get those games in, they can get those minutes under their belts. But definitely for the league, it was a great idea. We saw it last year, implemented well, and hopefully this year it's going to be the same, to be honest.
Yeah, and then obviously there was a huge loss this season with Malone dropping out, and it does make the fixtures a lot more difficult. There's always going to be a team that isn't playing at a certain weekend, and do you maybe see it as a bit of a step back for the women's AIL, and obviously maybe through no fault of Malone's, but they had to drop out. And what was your kind of opinion on it?
Yeah, when I heard the news break, I was kind of like, we're only a couple of days out from round 1 of the season, and the fixtures were already down, decided. They were meant to play that weekend. That game got cancelled. The team that they were going to be playing that weekend were down a fixture. So their season was moved by a week, and we've seen it since. Blackrock didn't have their game last week. They're now down to 4th in the table. They were one of the early title favourites. Now they're chasing the pack. Of course, they will have 2 weeks off now, because we do have a break in the fixtures this weekend. But for the league in general, it's down to 9 teams now. It would be great to have more teams for more competitive action. Are we going to see someone take Malone's place next season? Are we going to see maybe some more teams coming into the division to make it a lot more competitive? Could we see a Division 2 brought into it? it'll be interesting to see. There was very little from Malone's statement. There was very little coming out of it in terms of what's the main factor. I suppose it's definitely financial. It's probably one of the main reasons. Their men's team are still going to be in competition, but the women's team isn't. A couple of their women's players have since moved on to other teams in the division. Maybe that was already something that had happened and we didn't know it was already going on, that a couple of them had left. So, if they didn't have the squad numbers either, but it was definitely a huge blow. And I suppose the fixture headache that it's going to bring now, it's going to benefit some teams in if they have a couple of injuries that they could get a week off and come back in fully strength the week after. But, for the competitive nature of it, it did come at a bit of a sucker blow, to be honest.
It really did. And Diarmuid, thanks so much for the time today, for coming to talk about the women's AIL division.
No worries at all, Luke.
And one of the standout players in this women's AIL division has been Ella Roberts, and I spoke to her earlier today. Joining us now is Leinster, Ireland and Wicklow fullback Ella Roberts. Ella, welcome to the Rugby Show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And the AIL season, it's in full flow now. You've had 2 games so far. There has been 2 defeats, but against UL Bohemian, you did push until the very end. And I was just wondering, what have you made of the start to the season?
Yeah, I think it's been really good, to be honest with you. I think we've turned a lot of heads already. I mean, we started off playing rock, and then at halftime we were only losing 12-10, which, I mean, for us, it was just brilliant. And then even we kind of held on for the first 60 minutes of the game, but then we just kind of ran out of steam, and they're so used to playing at such a high intensity, and we're obviously not, because this is only our second kind of proper season in AIL, and then they just ran in a good few tries. But yeah, it's been really, really good. And then our game against Bows, I think, was kind of the standout kind of moment for us as a team so far in like our AIL 2 seasons, because I think finishing so close to top 14 was just brilliant, especially because we are so new. And then I think for us as players, it did just give us that kind of confidence boost, because I think even the start of last season didn't go great for us. And then to start this season, I know it's kind of been 2 defeats, but we had some really good performances. So I think that's what we're taking out of it anyway.
Yeah, you really have. And like you mentioned there, last year was Wicklow's debut in the AIL. I'm just wondering, what was the mood kind of like going into this season? Was it slightly different, kind of knowing what you were getting yourselves into?
Yeah, definitely. I think last season we really underestimated in a way how intense it actually was going to be. Like, I think we were coming from Division 1 and we were winning all our games and we were kind of winning them well, and then to go into AIL and kind of get those first few defeats and then lose by so much really shocked us all. But then this season we were a lot more prepared, I suppose, for the kind of intensity that's needed for AIL. So that was kind of our approach, really, is just, look, we have nothing to lose. We're a new team, relatively new to AIL. We're a young team as well. I mean, the average age, I think, is 22, which is insane for an AIL team. So yeah, our approach was just kind of like, look, go in and fight, really. That's how we were kind of going about it.
Yeah, and last year they obviously introduced the top 4 series and then the conference leg of it as well. How good do you think that is in building the game, and how does it help the AIL teams to adapt?
Yeah, so I think the thing with the conference and then the top 4 teams as well, like, it's a bit of a catch-22 really, because on one hand you have the top 4 teams playing each other the whole time and they're playing at such a high intensity, and then you have the conference, which is kind of the lower 6 teams, which obviously we were in, which was really, really good for us. And if you are in kind of those lower 6 teams, but then you're not playing the higher teams, so you're not getting that kind of intensity week on, week out kind of thing. But yeah, it was good for us because it did kind of give us a bit of time to settle in as well. So it was good in that way, kind of running up to this season. But overall, I don't think it's going to be continued, really. I think you have to have players playing at a high standard week in, week out, really.
Yeah, and obviously with one of the teams dropping out just a couple of weeks before the season started, did that have any impact on how you were maybe preparing and obviously not having a guaranteed game every week?
Yeah, so I think Malone was due to be our second game. So obviously we didn't actually end up taking the week off. We played an internal game. It was actually a siblings game. I don't know if you saw it. I think Wicklow are kind of advertising on their Instagram, but we had enough for a sibling versus non-siblings game. So that was good for us that we were able to kind of facilitate that. But yeah, Malone dropping out kind of last minute, and they again were in bottom 6 with us. So they're kind of one of the teams that we would have been focusing on to actually go and really try and get the win. Obviously, you want to get the win in all games, but Malone was one that we were really kind of targeting. So obviously to have them gone, it's not a blow, but I suppose we kind of had to rearrange our targets for the season then.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a bit about your provincial career. You made your debut against Connacht off the bench in the Interpros last year. What was your thoughts kind of entering the pitch? Was it a bit surreal, or were you laid back getting on?
Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. One of the coaches came up to me before the game and he was like, Ella, just breathe. I've never seen anyone this nervous for a game before. And I mean, I knew I was a sub. And then usually when it is kind of your first cap, you do get on in the second half. So I was like, okay, I have the whole first half to kind of sort myself out almost. But yeah, I was so nervous. Oh my God, even because I played under 18s Interpros as well, and I'd started most of the games for that, and I was nowhere near as nervous as I was for the senior Connacht game. And then also for the Ulster game as well, when I ended up starting, I was just a bag of nerves as well. I ended up shaking and stuff, and then I ended up playing really well. So I mean, I think nerves are a good thing.
They definitely are, and you got the 2 tries against Ulster in that game as well. And when you were going over the line for your first senior provincial try, what was going through your head?
I couldn't really believe it, to be honest with you. I mean, I think what happened was it Molly or Jenny had ended up kicking it through, and then I had picked it up and then ended up going around their fullback or something like that. But I remember when I was over the line, I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, is this actually happening? Like on my first start. And then it was funny because, you know, kind of when you're looking up and you're looking at all your teammates, and then I saw a few of the Wicklow girls in the stands. I was like, you know, this is actually really special in a way. So yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and the great 2 tries that you got as well. And then things just kind of kept getting better and better. Last autumn, you were then called into the Irish squad for the game against Japan. And you spoke about kind of the nerves for the Leinster match. And I'm like, it must have been way worse, was it, for that Irish match?
Yeah, well, oh my gosh, it was kind of, the whole thing was really surreal to me, because I'd gone from just playing an under 18s Interpro the year before to then making my senior Interpro debut to then getting called into the Irish camp, which was just unbelievable itself. And then to actually make the squad was really good. I know I didn't end up getting on in the game, but even still, just the whole build up was just nothing like I've ever kind of experienced before, obviously. But yeah, I was so nervous. Oh my gosh. I remember I was trying to call my mom and I was like, I need to just relax. But no, the manager, Jen, actually, she was absolutely brilliant to me. She was so nice.
And then you also had some experience with the Irish Sevens over in Portugal at the start of the summer. And I'm just wondering, kind of, is the camp very different? What's the vibe kind of like around there compared to, let's say, the 15s?
Yeah, it's all like, it's very professional. To be fair to the girls, like, it is absolutely brilliant. You know, it is kind of the same structure really. Like, you have your training, team training, and then you have analysis of training, and then you have analysis of other teams as well, and then everybody eats together, and obviously you're all sharing a room, so you are kind of in your own player bubble in a sense, which I think is really good. But no, the setups are obviously different because they're different games and that sort of thing, and you're in different places. But no, everything is really professional, and then you're just in your player bubble really, and just kind of absorbing the whole thing and focusing on the games. And
do you find yourself maybe drawn to the 15s or the 7s more, and which would kind of suit your play style more?
See, that's a hard one to work out, because I have only just kind of started 7s in the last year when I got called into kind of the development program last year. But no, I love things about both of them really. I love the fact in 7s you're sprinting the whole time. I love sprinting, but then in 7s I feel like you have to have that kind of extra level of fitness because you are sprinting the whole time. And then obviously I have asthma, so that's kind of something I struggle with as well. But then in 15s it's like you get to kick the ball a lot more, and you can kind of take a step back when you're in fullback and you have the backfield. Yeah, there's pros to both of them really. It's hard to answer that one.
Yeah, keep the foot in both doors anyway, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
And then after the 7s in July, you were named Leinster Young Player of the Year. That must have been a huge day for you and your family. And what was that like?
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. I didn't actually expect it at all. I remember at the actual dinner, they were announcing Young Player of the Year, and then one of the other girls, Alice, said out, she was like, Ella, that's you. And I was like, that's not me, will you stop? And then next thing you know, I was up on the big screen, and yeah, I nearly felt like crying, but I actually didn't. I kept myself together. But yeah, that was brilliant. And then I think just the support I've gotten from Wicklow especially, and then even just people all over Leinster. I mean, that was the one thing I couldn't believe, like all the messages I was getting. It was really, really lovely.
And where does that kind of achievement rank in your career so far? Because it is a huge one. I saw yourself and Dan Sheehan pictured as the 2 young players of the year, and where does that kind of rank over your short career so far?
Definitely one of the top ones anyway. I think, it's one thing kind of making your debut and then having a good performance, but then actually getting recognised for that performance. And obviously, like, I have had such a short career so far, but yeah, it's definitely one of the top 2 anyway.
And then with women's rugby in general, I think it's moving in the right direction, and the IRFU recently announced that they're going to be bringing in professional contracts for some of the 15th players. I'm just wondering, do you think how good of a step that is for women's rugby, and what the future kind of holds with that?
Yeah, look, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's been a long time coming. I mean, some of the sacrifices some of the women that have made, even over the last 10 years, is just unbelievable. And I think now to finally get the chance to actually be a professional rugby player and have it as your full-time career, and you're getting, enough kind of pay that you can manage all your expenses and everything. Because, for Leinster last year, a lot of us weren't even getting diesel money. And then, when you live in the likes of Wicklow and then training is in North Dublin, or you live in Wexford, it's a long commute, and they're the kind of sacrifices. I mean, that's only like skimming the top of what people have sacrificed. So yeah, I think it's been a long time coming, and I think it's going to be so good for the game, really. I mean, the likes of England are so far ahead of us just at the moment because they have been professional for a while longer than we have. So yeah, I think once we go professional and then we have like the dedicated resources and time and money to the game, to the women's game in Ireland, it's going to be so good. But then on the other hand, it's kind of like, what's going to happen to the club game then? Like, are these internationals going to be released for the club? And if not, what's their club going to do? But then I think you kind of have to learn from the men as well in that sense. I mean, when the men first were kind of going pro and getting contracts, everybody thought, what about the club game? And then the club game is still really, really good now in Ireland. So yeah, I think long term it's definitely the right move.
And you're also still studying at the moment as well. And how hard is it to juggle the rugby and the training with a number of teams, and then while trying to be a full-time student as well?
Yeah, that was the one thing I kind of struggled with, especially last year. Trinity have been so supportive, and so have the IRFU, and like over it all. I'm in final year physio now. So yeah, I think going into final year it's just got to be a bit of an extra stress. But again, the IRFU are so supportive as well. But the one thing is just trying to find the time for everything, and then just making sure you don't burn out. I mean, like, I was so organized last year. I mean, I'm an organized person anyway, but I think to kind of be able to do training with different teams and do full-time college, and if you're on placement at the same time, you have to be organized. So I think that's one thing I am, is organized now, thanks to it all.
You really do have to be. And just before we wrap things up, we like to do a bit of a quick fire round here on the Rugby Show. So I might say a couple of things to you, and you're just going to say maybe the player that comes to your head.
Okay, perfect. Right, I'll try my best.
So if I was to ask you who's the best passer that you've played with, who would you say to me?
Lucy Mulhall, definitely.
Best kicker?
Best kicker? Oh, that's a tough one. I nearly would say Lucy Mulhall, but I mean, I'd love to say my sister Beth as well. I think she's got a fantastic boot on her, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say
that. Best tackler?
Vicky Kinlan, definitely one of the girls on the Wicklow team. She's on the sevens as well, but oh my gosh, if you've seen her tackle, she's brilliant.
The best leader?
The best leader, probably Sene Neopu. She's fantastic. Any questions you have, go to her.
And then finally, an idol that you might have had in the rugby world when you were growing up?
Probably Niamh Briggs, actually. She was definitely one I used to always watch, and I used to just think she's brilliant. I still do.
Ella, thanks so much for joining us here today. And I'm afraid that is all that we have time for on today's show. But make sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. for another stacked show.